Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for still being here at this darker part of the day, as we're now winter. Cloud Foundation, exploring your toolbox. It's not just about Cloud Foundation. There are obviously a lot of products under the boundary or foundation of Cloud Foundation, and a lot of this is applicable for other products. They don't necessarily need to be just VCF, but we kind of cover everything in one good go here. So a little bit about us. My name is Stephan McTighe. I'm a technical adoption manager at VMware by Broadcom now, as of yesterday. And we have?
James Tiffany, same. I'm a technical adoption manager, been there about 3 years now.
And that's us. A little bit of an agenda. We're going to look at effectively a few different topics here. One is going to be health checking, reporting and observability. A bit about custom dashboarding and backups of that said content. A little bit about administration and some patching and upgrade stuff. So into our health checking and reporting, health check and reportability. Oh God, no, too late in the day now, isn't it? Health checking, reporting and observability.
So what you'll see during this presentation, so this is an evolution of a presentation we've done before, and what we're showing you is the tools, but also then how you can use them going forward through automation so that you don't have to sit there clicking and moving around UIs and stuff like that. So at the basic, the SOS tool, you do have to log on to the SDDC manager, but what it does do is it gives you a view of the environment and whether it's healthy or not. You can see from the screen, it goes through all of the different parts of it, telling you whether it's green, red and stuff like that. So you'll be asked to use it if you're troubleshooting with GS and stuff like that, but it will go through and check everything for you.
And then, as James pointed out, kind of the evolution, that's running something manual. You've got to go in and do it. You've got to be logging into SDDC Manager to actually do it. But we want to try and find easier ways of working and make your life a lot easier. So there is a PowerShell module called VMware Cloud Foundation Reporting. It's quite a well-maintained PowerShell module. You can see here a just quick selection of some of the commands that exist in here. And here is a quick grab of the output of the health check report, which is just one of the reports that this can produce. It's all available on that PowerShell gallery. And it's just a HTML report, but it's a very interactive, nice HTML report rather than a command line where you have to go through, and if it skims off your screen and you cycle through, you're trying to put more on the end of your command and things like that, and it all just gets a bit messy. So nice report. And to hopefully, if that transitions, there we go. Well, that's the command we're using here, which is invoke VCF health report, which gives you basically all the content you get from the SOS tool, but in nice HTML. This is now a little bit of a workflow that we're going to go through, which kind of is a bit of a theme through some of this, in that we want to try and orchestrate a lot of these jobs. There's no point in just running these ad hoc. You've got better things to be doing with your day than running manual tasks that are easily automatable. So in terms of a flow, we're scheduling things. We're going to use some sort of pipeline automation. In this case, it's actually Azure DevOps pipeline. I'll just cover up my VMware badges. And it's just my personal choice because it's the one I know the best. From a pipeline, we're going to do a lot of orchestration. We're going to want to pull in things like secrets because you don't want them in plain text in any of your code. So we'll be pulling them in from places. We'll be going back and pulling those into a pipeline to consume. We're going to execute some code. There's going to be some PowerShell. There's going to be some APIs, things like that. We might go and download other bits from various repos, GitHub, things like that, to pull back in to execute. And in the case of what we're going to do in a second, which is we're going to produce this report, and it sends it, and it emails it across. So this could be part of like daily checks, that type of stuff, and easily getting hold of it. So here is one we recorded earlier. From anyone not familiar, that is Azure DevOps pipelines. It is just running some YAML files where you define what your pipeline or configuration is going to do. And what I've done in this code, which you will see very briefly, I think, in this video in a minute, is just executing that PowerShell command. But what it is doing is going off to Azure Key Vault grabbing the credentials it needs to be able to run this report. It's grabbing some other repos around sending emails. So there's some other code snippets it's pulling in from other places and making it all reusable. You'll see kind of here we've got a couple of different grabs of secrets. I think this bit now is just downloading some of that. So you'll now see that it's going to pull in very, very briefly a selection of values that you won't see, and they're securely passed into the pipelines. And now it's going to execute the report. So this will then skim through, and it will produce all sorts of different data. And this would be what you'd see if you were just running it natively in a command prompt. I've then got it sending out an email, so it's just sending that HTML report out. And then this is what this report looks like. It's got a lot of information, as you can see. I won't go through every single line and talk you through it, but you can see down there we've got a lot of health-based stuff to take you through, and there is actually some red in here, thankfully, to have a look at. I don't bother backing up my lab, apparently. But it's a great tool to have on a daily. You know, getting that report out to anybody who's managing your infrastructure at the start of a day, for instance, you've got the ability. But from a concept perspective, you know, we've gone from you can run a command on a console, or we can take it through and actually run it using PowerShell and then adding it into pipelines. Want to talk about some dashboarding?
Yep. So as part of the Cloud Foundation suite, you get access to area operations. Used to be vRealize operations, but the great thing about this is the dashboards that are inbuilt and that you can add in. So the inbuilt connector can connect to an SDDC environment, and it will discover the environment. But the great thing about it is if you add a new workload domain, it will add that automatically. So you don't need to go in, add the VC credentials. It will automatically discover it and start reporting on it. And you can see on the dashboards, there's a specific SDDC pack as well that adds things like certificates, because everyone knows that you install it and then you don't really know about certificates until they expire, and then it breaks things and you've got to go back and fix them. But the great thing about this is it will give you all of the SDDC components, all the certificates when they're expiring. You get alerts on it as well. So hopefully that should mean that you don't get into the position where they expire and have to fix them while you're trying to do an upgrade and things like that as well.
Cool. As much as there's a load of great stuff out of the box, you sometimes have a need for something a little bit more custom. So this is kind of based on a scenario that I helped one of my customers out with, which is they wanted to be able to show capacity for a subset of some of their infrastructure. They use a single cluster and a lot of different shared business units and application owners. So what they looked at doing was using a resource pool as just a bells and whistles folder, let's call it, and set some limits. You know, that business unit may have paid for 10% of the infrastructure. They're limited to 10% on that resource pool. But what we then wanted to be able to do was go, well, actually, we want to see how much capacity is left on that and look at some of the metrics. So what we did was we took a cluster capacity report, which is out of the box. It's one of the ones you get. And we changed some of the context of it over. So rather than it targeting a compute cluster, we changed it to a resource pool. Still had all the same widgets, but we're now focusing on a different object. We then needed to change some of the metrics, because we're no longer looking for metrics for a compute resource pool. We are looking at compute cluster. We're looking at a resource pool, and there are differences in the metrics. If anybody is using resource pools, be aware the metric list for resource pools is a lot smaller than what you can get on a cluster. So there are some pros and cons, but what we did was we produced this really simple custom dashboard, because it was going to be going to people who weren't necessarily overly technical, and we wanted to just be able to show them some raw figures that meant something to them, rather than some of the sort of metrics on here. They're going to look at that and go, yeah, that's a lovely picture. What's it really telling me? That gives you a percentage, and that's me putting a very nasty throttle on that particular the virtual machines in that resource pool. And you can see now that there's a substantial amount of contention and things like that. So in terms of doing that, it isn't a huge. In fact, I think I'm going to do a little demo of that if it's still online. In fact, am I going to be able to get that to load? Have I still got Wi-Fi? I might have. Has that stayed alive?
No.
Will that go over there? Oh, look at that. Okay, let's just quickly log into that one. One of those works. So what we've got here, we've got the cluster capacity dashboard, and here is the one that we've had a little bit of a play with. If I was to go in and edit this one, just give you a very quick look at what this looks like. So in terms of input data, this is where we're going to change now from that in there would have had the name of a cluster. I've gone into the plus icon that you can, to add in an additional object, and all I've done is typed in the name of my resource pool, and I've added it in, simple as that. And then you can go down here to output data, which is where you can modify the metrics, and you can see here that we're actually looking at now resource pool metrics. The actual metric itself might look very similar to a cluster. It might have the same name, but it's still ever so slightly different. So if I had object type as cluster in there, even with the same metric, it just wouldn't show anything because it's going, well, I'm not looking at a cluster, I'm looking at a resource pool. So you can literally go in and just add them, and it's very free to do. Free flowing to do. Takes a little minute perhaps to get your head round, but it's something I don't see an awful lot of people doing. People buy or have ARIA operations. They use a lot of the default out-of-the-box stuff. But this is quite an interesting way of just getting to really what you want and trying to make the most out of it. So definitely something that's worth considering looking at. There we go. Right, that's the dangerous live demo out of the way. Are we just going to break now? Go on. There we go. You've now spent a bunch of time developing custom dashboards. So you've put a lot of time in, a lot of effort, you've done some innovation, you've hopefully met some business needs and requirements. You've hopefully built in a lot of operational availability and benefits operationally through that content. Might not just be capacity, could be anything. You're going to want to try and back it up. Again, don't want to do this manually. So this is an example of how you can take the APIs for ARIA Ops, wrap it in some PowerShell. So this is just a standard invoke REST method commandlet from PowerShell. Connecting up and getting a token. And we're going to go through that ever so slightly. So there should be a little clip of you just running this. So in terms of actually achieving this, you need an authentication token. I'm actually passing in some credentials from Workspace ONE Access, or VIDM if you know it as that. Backing up the actual content that I want. And you might see here that it kind of says export and export. And when you export something normally, it usually means you get a file right at the end of it. In this, you don't. Export means it gets all the content ready inside ARIA Ops, and then you actually have to download it using the zip API to a file output location. And then this little bit at the bottom here is, we might have got it all out, but one is when you want to put it back in. You can put it back in with PowerShell as well. If you wanted, again, take it back to where we were before, is trying to show how far you could keep going with some of this is, again, you don't really want to be running that manually. Put it into some sort of orchestration, have that running on a schedule that's backing up your content daily, whatever you want to do. Does it need to export and just stay on a file share? No. Do you want to put it into source control? You could do those types of things. You can then really begin to build a journey, but using PowerShell effectively and APIs.
One of the reasons you want to do that is Stephan had a customer that had spent a lot of time doing dashboards. When it came to the upgrade, someone went in, selected, don't mind if you overwrite all the custom data. They upgraded ARIA Ops, great. When they got to the other end, they had none of the custom content left in it and they hadn't done backup. So something like that can save you hours, days worth of work having to recreate it after a backup, an upgrade.
Yeah, they were not happy that day.
Do they still not have a backup on built in?
So yes, you can. So you can back up content through the UI, but you click in again. Okay. So again, this is why making use of the APIs means you can automate the process, build it into an automated flow that works for you.
Going into other ARIA tools that are available inside Cloud Foundation is ARIA Operations for Logs, Logs Insight. Now it's a great product in that it takes all your data in. It means that if you're trying to troubleshoot an issue, you don't have to log on to each individual ESXi server or something like that. And as you can see in here, it's very easy to start searching for information. But you know, the great part of it is you find that information and it would be in the section here. But as it's highlighted down there, you can then go to in the context, which will take you to the log file, and you can see before or after without having to manually search through log files and things like that. And it's a great way of easily getting to the information without trawling through loads of logs. So that's great. So it's there, and a lot of people, it's there, and you use it when you need to, because you know if something goes wrong, you can jump on it, have a look round. But people don't do it. So as with the operations stuff we just covered, there's loads of different ways you can actually use it. That means you don't have to log on every day to look at it. So one of those ones is being able to visualize the log data as an actual alert. So you are able to integrate ARIA Operations for Logs with ARIA Operations, and you get that pass through between the two of them. So that means that if you're in ARIA Operations, you can click on something and it will take you into the context inside logs, and the other way round. And what we're going to the other thing it can do is you can webhook it into ITSMs and things like that to update, populate information, alerting, stuff like that, and obviously the email notifications as well. So what this demo is showing is there's great information out there, but what you can also do is set up your own stuff. So here what we're doing is you might want to say set up an alert that tells you when really important machines have been powered off. So in here, I'm just searching for a machine that's been powered off recently. You can create a custom dashboard in it so that if you actually do go into logs, you can see that information visualized. And you've got your own custom dashboard then. But what you can do is you can then also create the search. And this is how, and this is only sped up a little bit, this is how easy it is to do it, is that you can do that same search, but if you click up in the corner, you can then actually create an alert for it. And you can see all the different fields you can get, timings, triggers, resets, the fact that you can send it to an email. You've got the webhook section. If you had that configured, you could send it in there. But here you've got the connection into ARIA Operations. So you can actually send an alert into ARIA Operations for that specific event. And when I test it, you can come into ARIA Operations. There's no alerts at the moment. There's me trying to find a refresh because it's updated, and there you go. You get the in-context alert, and you can pass a lot more information in it. You can customize it. You can give it that information, and obviously Operations has got then the ability to hook into, say, your ServiceNow for call login and stuff like that, and can auto-generate a ticket as well. So, but that's just like one instance. You could build anything that you can find that's logged as an alert, you could build around it. So that one was just an example of if a really important virtual machine was powered off, but you could do deleted, added, anything that you can get an alert for can be customized like this.
Cool. So next one is about administration, and this one I see all of my customers have problems with this one, which is around password management. Maintaining passwords within SDDC Manager is really important. the amount of people that just let them expire and then go, oh, it's broke, and then have to go and deal with fixing all the things that just broke purely because they just chose not to rotate passwords or maintain them properly. So just couple of key points. Try and avoid changing passwords outside of SDDC Manager. If you do that, you've then got to go not only and take that password, you've got to go and bring that back into SDDC Manager and get the database to update. Sometimes you can have some problems with that, so it's better to just not let them expire in the first place and don't worry about chopping them in other places. I mentioned about rotation. There are inbuilt features in here for being able to schedule rotations. So again, you could be using the built-in functionality to do that, and then have a process perhaps that grabs those using the API, grabs the actual passwords out of the database, which you can then go and put somewhere, still quite manual, and we'll come on to an alternative for that shortly. I've mentioned APIs. All of this can be API driven inside of the developer center within SDDC Manager. You can execute APIs directly from there. Lovely, but again, quite manual. Avoid removing expiration settings. That's probably a big one. How many people like to turn off the root password expiration on things because it's easier at times? I think we've all probably done it once or twice. Some people like to do it more than others though, and I do have another customer who likes to turn off root password expiration, but things like NSX within VCF does not like it. So if you do that, you break all your upgrades, so you just create yourself more problems down the line. So try and avoid that because it's best practice not to do that in the first place. There's a couple of different methods that you can have for getting passwords and rotating them using the UI. There's a command actually you can run on the SDDC Manager appliance itself, which is lookup_passwords. You can specify various different parameters to filter that to all or singular objects to pull out the details, but it just literally pulls them out in plain text. So depending on what you're doing that on, you might just be having, if you've got recorded consoles or things like that for any access into secure environments, you're just recording passwords that are firing up on screen. And sorry, there was just up there, that's the API for getting the credentials. So if you're looking to see what passwords have been set for any of the components within a VCF environment, that is one of the APIs that is the API that you would use to pull that information out. Now, to try and take it a little bit further, there is another good PowerShell module called Power VCF. Has anybody used it? Heard of it? You have now. So there is a PowerShell module called Power VCF. It's quite well maintained. There are a stack of commandlets that exist in this. And the good thing about this, it is all using APIs under the hood, but somebody has gone to the effort to wrap it in a really nice formed commandlet which follows all the PowerShell best practices and has done all the hard work for you. It's got all the error checking built in. You can just make use of them. And we actually make use of one of them in one of the next demos, which is to actually reset the passwords for, I think it's an NSX edge node we do in the demo. So again, we've gone from using like APIs for things like with ARIA Ops where there isn't a PowerShell module to do that specific thing, and I'm wrapping it in something native, or you can use the out-of-the-box stuff. So this is hopefully going to play the actual pipeline, the actual pipeline running. And what we are doing in this, sort of, if we try and cast back to that, what's the word I'm looking for? Picture where we had the little Pac-Man moving around. This is again pulling credentials from an Azure Key Vault, but it's also now setting credentials back. So this particular pipeline is going to go and create a random password that meets the requirements of the endpoints that it's going to be reset on. It goes and updates Azure Key Vault with that password. It then goes off to SDDC Manager using one of the Power VCF commands, and we might get a glimpse of it in a second, or we might not. I don't know if the actual command will show up on here, but you can see here we're actually updating Azure Key Vault. It has gone off and done that, and it skipped through. I should have paused that when I did the video, sorry about that. It's then gone and used the API that is wrapped in that nice PowerShell command to go and actually reset that. And what you'll see here now is I'm going to run the API to get the passwords, and you will see that the password is now going to match in both Azure Key Vault and in the SDDC Manager. So It's not the perfect workflow. There's room for a lot of error checking, but I want to show you the concept of the fact that you can use some of these tools that are out there now to just completely take away a lot of the pain around passwords. You can set this on a schedule. You just download the file. You set these on a schedule, whatever your password rotation policies are, whether they're, I think somebody actually told me the other day they had a daily password rotation policy by their security. And I was like, yeah, that's lovely. You're not going to want to do that by hand, right? You're going to want something that you can kick off workflows or have them scheduled or could be triggered in some way as well. Azure DevOps Pipeline is just one tool, and it just happens to be the one that I know how to use because I spent time using it once upon a time. And I started my IT career off in the NHS where you used to kind of have to fix printers using like PC parts from 25 years ago and try and make it work or something. You might also be in organisations where you've already got tool sets in different areas and you can't necessarily have the full suite of ARIA automation, for instance, or ARIA orchestrator to do all of this. You might already have this in the organisation and it's an approved tool that's paid for. You might have to make use of the tools that are there for you, and you can stitch all these things together and hopefully make your life a lot easier. We'll talk about patching. In fact, before we move on to that, anyone got any questions about that? No? Cool. We'll go on to patching and upgrades.
So, patching and upgrades. Anyone who's done a VCF upgrade is forget the marketing, all the hype and everything like that. It does make it a hell of a lot easier than if you were actually having to do it manually. Is it perfect? Yeah, well, we'll pass on that one. But so when you get into that cycle of actually coming to the upgrades, there's a lot of things to think about. It's not just a push a button, it will go away and upgrade it and everything like that. There are a lot of things to consider before you actually even get to the point of pushing that button. And it might seem obvious, but checking release notes. What does a new version bring? Are there limitations? Are there known issues in the next version that might affect you and some of the other products that talk into your environment? So checking that is quite important. Hardware and firmware checks. Now there's a lot of stuff is potentially built in if you're using images and things like that. Some of that and VxRail, some of that complexity is taken out of it, but it's always good to have that tick in the box just to make sure, because there might be an issue with the next version of VMware you need to go to support that version and things like that. So it's always good to check on that. If you are using custom images, it's getting hold of that custom image. Now, each time we release a new version of ESXi, a vendor might not necessarily create a custom image for it. So if you are using custom images inside VCF, you have to go and create that custom image yourself. That takes time, so you don't want to get up to Friday evening, realise you haven't done it when the change window starts in an hour's time. You want to do that well in advance as well. Getting the upgrade bundles down. Again, anyone who's done a VCF upgrade knows that isn't exactly the fastest of things. So making sure you do that in advance. I had a customer recently that didn't do it in advance, and because of the amount of time it took to download the bundles, it exceeded the window and they had to cancel it for that one. So doing that type of thing in advance is quite important. Health checks that we'll be covering in a minute. Stephan's already covered the health checks. But we'll cover the bit running some of the stuff, the pre-checks that you can do, snapshots of VCs and stuff like that, potentially backing up your VDSs to make sure that if you do have to recover worst case, you've got that type of information stored. Third-party integrations is a big one. Obviously, the VCF as a concept, you're upgrading the VMware components. You've also got your backup software, you've got your monitoring software, all those things that interact with it that could be affected by an upgrade. So you need to look at checking those as well. And potentially, depending on your support, go for a proactive SR. But what you can also do is run the upgrade pre-assessment. It's in the SDDC Manager, non-impacting, and it will potentially give you a list of any issues that you might have ahead of time. You can fix them and then be ready. So going into what we've been talking about through the whole part of this is automation, and you could do everything manually, but this is actually showing an upgrade from 4.5 to 5. We have, although it's sped up and condensed and everything, it's like a 5-minute video. But what it's showing is you're literally going into the UI, click, click, move around, click, click, which is great. It 100% works, saves you shed loads of time from doing it manually, but you need to log on and do it yourself. So,
and each section, so on a non-VxRail VCF instance, there's like 5 bundles, I think it is off the top of my head. You'll do the first one, which will be the SDDC manager. It'll finish. You then got to go back in and, right, I'm going to do the next bit, configuration drift. Let's do that one. And if you've gone off and made a cup of tea and got collared with something else, or another instance coming, you've kind of then go, that's not actually flowing and carrying on and achieving more. So, yeah, trying to get it to flow through would be better.
So the great thing about the whole thing is, more and more automation's coming in, and like I say, downloading the bundles. There's no automated way. There's not a way of saying once a week, run a check on the internet, pull down all the bundles. You actually have to manually go in. You can schedule them or download them immediately, but there's also PowerShell, the ability to run it through PowerShell now. So although it's still manual, you're not having to go through the UI, and the whole point of all of these, and you'll see it because I haven't gone into the details Stephan had, but that could again be potentially wrapped into the workflows and everything like that. But you can do that remotely. You don't have to log on. You don't have to click round and things like that. So what this demo is going to show us is, Stephan showed us the health check, which gives you a whole view of the environment. It's brilliant, red, green, of everything. But the pre-check does a very similar thing, but it's looking at the specific upgrade, not is everything healthy, is everything good. It runs through, I think it's 156 checks to make sure your environment's ready for the upgrade. And again, this is the HTML output of it, which means instead of logging onto the SDDC manager, running it, getting it and waiting for it, you can actually schedule this to run. It will go away and do it. You get that information back again, and you can potentially start looking at it. Going on to the next step, so you've run the health check, you've fixed everything, and this one is the next one of, can I actually do the upgrade? So you've done the health check, but before you actually hit that button and do the check, this one will go away, and as you can see on the screen, you're not going to do an upgrade because NSX and Domain Manager, I think it was, had failed. Now, because it's run the command, you can actually go back into the UI and see it and everything like that, but it would have been caught on the previous script anyway. But it's just that fail safe to stop you, even if you're automating it, going through and actually pulling the trigger. It will stop you before you get there to make sure that you don't get into a position where you're trying to do an upgrade on something that is going to fail.
Is that video still running? I can't tell from this side.
No, I think it's
No,
stopped.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just showing all the errors and everything like that. Now, that's just a part of what it can do. So you can do the pre-checks, you can do the bundle download, you can do the actual upgrade itself. Now, we haven't got time to go through all of that because it literally would be probably a half a day session to go through all of that. The great thing is that all of this is publicly available. So I'm not going to claim any. This was all from Gary's website and blogs and everything, but there's a GitHub repository that holds all of the scripts to enable you to do that. So, those are the scripts. That's the starting point. You can then start doing the workflow stuff that Stephan showed earlier. And I'm not saying that you ever would run an end-to-end VCF upgrade, but if you've got demo environments, so I used to work for a service provider, and I used to do VCF bring-ups twice a day. Bring it up, tear it down, bring it up, tear it down. But each time a new version come out, I'd have to patch it manually, you'd have to download the bundles and everything like that. This could potentially get you to that endpoint that you can do other things in a test or demo environment and things like that. So, and you can see down here, all of these, you know, so we run the system pre-check one earlier, but there's password ones, and like I say, it goes all the way from being able to upgrade the SDDC manager all the way to doing full workload domains and everything else as well. Publicly available. Gary's part of the...
That's his website if you want to get the QR code.
He's part of the VMware Validated Solutions team, so he lives and breathes this stuff, so this is regularly updated and expanded on all the time. So brilliant, and he's got a whole series on, but you can also see the evolution of it, because when he first started it, the ability to download the bundles was you'd have to go onto the SDDC manager, you'd have to get the file that told you what bundles needed downloaded, and then you could run a command to pull down those bundles. He then automated it that it would go to the SDDC manager and pull that information. So you can see that's growing all the time and hopefully making everyone's life easier as we go along.
Just in terms of automation, does anybody have quite an extensive setup within your organisation for automating, or is, you know, what, if in terms of the people we've got here today, are you at the beginning of an automation journey? Do you still do everything quite manually? Anybody wants to say anything? You can.
Sort of halfway down. So this sort of stuff would work really well for our labs, because we have from the platform side of our business, we do in the solution offerings. So this is really handy for me, especially for the lab environments and demos that we do.
Yep.
There's no point in you spending your time doing things that you can effectively just script.
I wasn't aware it was here, so this is really
That's why we do these sessions. So if anything, if you could take away is this and Power VCF and the PowerShell reporting module, you're already, if you're not even aware that they exist, you're going to get so much more information available to you for us to start with. You know, a HTML report showing you pretty greens and reds, and well, hopefully just pretty greens actually is more what you want. You've just got that easier visual aid. You can have a quick look. You haven't got to go and log into something, maybe getting secure passwords to get into those environments, stuff that just takes time. You've got other things you need to be doing. You've got other people asking you to do stuff. Just take away your pain. Work smarter, not harder, as they say, right? And yeah, anybody else got a story on their automation or anything like that, or anything they can see where that this could be quite useful in your environments? Does anybody not automate a thing? Really?
Well, all our VCF environments are offline.
Yep.
Completely offline anyway, so we've got the added complexity of all the offline bundles and all that
Yep.
nonsense, which is painful enough. And I'll be honest, we've done 5 or 6 VCF upgrades and never had one go smoothly enough yet. But I would be...
I thought you were going to say the great, and I was like, oh.
Never had one go smoothly enough that I would be confident in not babysitting it every step of the way.
No, yeah, I understand. Yep. And it might not be that, you know, you're at the point where like you say, you've got the confidence that you want to begin to automate elements of that process, but certainly around checking it to make sure it's hopefully in a better state, and automating that will hopefully help you get towards the day maybe that you automate part of an upgrade, or certainly the stuff leading up to the actual install bit.
But even the automation of being able to get the bundles down to a central location that you could then do get it into the secured environment and stuff like that will save some, not loads of time, but it still helps.
We don't use PowerShell so much, but we do use Terraform, and I would imagine if Terraform modules don't already exist for this sort of stuff, that
There's
this can form the basis if they don't already exist.
Yeah, so there is, that's actually a good point actually. There is a VCF SDDC manager Terraform module. I think there's a guy, I think his name is Brian O'Connell, I want to say. He's somebody I noticed the other day who's done some blogging on using that module. So it might be worth a look if Terraform's something that you use in your environment. I'm personally quite a big fan of Terraform. Used it quite a bit, not from an SDDC point. That's kind of next on my list of things when I get a minute. But yeah, there is a module, and I think it's quite well maintained as well. It's growing all the time. So. Cool. Well, that's it from us. I think we've maybe just about finished on time, which is fantastic. Sorry. Yeah. So I apparently have a slightly better social footprint than James does. I don't know whether James will be putting them up on LinkedIn, but I will certainly be putting them up on GitHub, and they can be found up there. So there'll be notifications probably on both LinkedIn and Twitter, and there'll be links off to the GitHub for the slides. I will also put some of the code up there, actually. It's not in a state at the minute that anybody would want to look at, because I've done it all in my loose, non-organised way, but I will get examples of so when we were looking at running the APIs, and it's all nested into the invoke REST method, that's something that's really repeatable. I literally keep a block of code that I just use as my sample to go, actually, I'm going to run an API, grab my little template. I use the concept of splatting. Has anybody ever heard of that before in PowerShell? Yeah, it's just I find it a much nicer way of being able to read what you're looking at when you're doing it. You can take those examples. I'll put them all up on GitHub. I'll create a folder which will be probably VMUG 2023, something like that, and it'll be up. So yeah, if you're on any of those platforms, keep an eye out in the probably next week now, realistically. We'll get them up there, and yeah, there'll be code examples, slides, and anything else that I think could be useful. Any of the other links for the web content that from some other people who've done some great work. And yeah, any other questions?
Cool. Well, thank you all for coming, especially when it's so late and everything. But brilliant. And if you want to reach out to us, then please feel free.
Okay, thank you. Awesome.
Cheers.